Hi everybody, and this is a very different kind of video over here at Behind That Suit. My name is Holden Stefanbroy, and today I will be telling you a little bit about the 14 hours or so I spent waiting in line with the fine folk, parents of children who will be starting the kindergarten class at Royal Vale next year, I believe it is. You know what? I spent 14 hours with these people, and I didn't actually check when their kids would be starting school. I digress. Let me bring you through this story. It's going to be all over. I suppose this is the closest thing to a story time video I've ever done, but it's a true story that happened this weekend that just passed. It is currently February 3rd as I'm recording this. I am bloody exhausted, and let me tell you how it went. I have a colleague who wanted to send his kid to this particular school, and so he was recruiting help to sub in and stand in line. So you may be wondering why this is even a thing, because keep in mind it's winter in Montreal and it was literally below 0 degrees Celsius as we were there. In my opinion, it was a lovely below, like -2. It was very pleasant, but in general it is still kind of negative temperatures, and it's a bizarre idea that parents would spend a significant portion of time standing in line. Now, to be clear, the period they stood in line, like the big group was from like Friday evening, somewhere in the ballpark of 5 p.m., straight through till Monday morning at 6 a.m. when the doors of the school open, but registration only starts at 8 a.m. at this particular school. Now, this particular school, Royal Vale, has a long legacy of this tradition coming through because in Montreal, kids go to school based on zones for the most part. So you kind of go to the school that's closest to your house within, whatever. But then there's these other schools that are kind of special. Maybe in the case of Royal Vale, there's kind of advanced curriculum options available. So these like special schools are kind of open to the public. Now, there's a few of them in Montreal. As an example, there's the high school, Royal West Academy, where it's more of a meritocracy in how they do admittance. You kind of have to go through a test and a bunch of other stuff. It's still a public school, but you can get in. Now, yeah, that's an extra caveat. These are all public schools we're talking about. We're not talking about private, we're talking about public. So how it ended up working is this particular school every year has X number of open slots available, because if you get one kid in, all the siblings that are in school at the same time are just automatically registered. So every year around this time, they basically on the Friday or whenever post how many available slots there are for kids who can start the kindergarten classes this year. And essentially, it's a first come, first served basis. Now, that means that literally whoever gets there first, signs their name on, boom, kid's basically going to get in. There is some logistics in the middle where, in theory, something can come up. As long as you get there before the number of slots is filled up, you're basically guaranteeing your kid in, and the reputation of the school is that solid that year over year, parents will line up and wait. Now, it used to be just Sunday. Sunday to Monday, and it was kind of cute, and it always made news headlines, and they're at it again. But over the last few years in Montreal, something has been happening. So we're going to take a quick caveat to talk about language politics, which might be a subject you've never thought about, but maybe you have. I don't know. I live in a place that has a government that relies on like anti-English, pro-French propaganda in order to do everything. Like it's a core tenet of our society is this like French versus English divide that exists, like all sorts of stuff. You can check out Bill 101, just Google that, put the word Quebec after, and you'll see like how long back this kind of stuff runs. Now, one of the consequences of this Bill 101 thing is if you went to school in English in Quebec, you have the right to send your kid to school in English in Quebec. So that means that if you're an immigrant or you went to French school, you are literally not allowed to send your kid to school in English. And this is kind of a huge assimilation effort that the government does in order to kind of stamp out English at a generational level. Thankfully, a lot of the youth seem to want to be bilingual, therefore speaking both languages. So I don't know that it's going to be as effective as the Quebec government would like, but at a very literal level, what has been happening year over year is the number of eligible English students in the province is dwindling. Why? Because there are going to be people who leave Quebec. If you leave Quebec, you go somewhere else, you're no longer one of those eligible English kids that can go to the school. And then that means everybody new that comes to Quebec has to go to French school. Over time, this actually has a drastic impact on the available Anglo populations. So how do we compensate for this? Essentially, every year we see another headline or two about how the Quebec government has decided that these particular schools are going to be closing and they're going to be turned into French schools, or these two English schools are going to be merged, etc., etc. So what that really amounts to is that this lineup crap that used to be like a novelty at this particular school, or maybe it happened at other schools. I don't know that it wasn't at every school, but I certainly got the impression that the extent and the need of lining up has changed to ensure that your kid can get into school, partly because there's less English schools available. And if you're watching this and you completely disagree with me and you happen to be from here and you happen to have knowledge and you know better, I would really love to hear your opinion. With all these English schools closing, we found that there were like lineups going on at like multiple English schools, that even ones that were public but within the particular zone, meaning that whereas Royal Vale, this school I was at, which we're going to get to some stories, was open to anybody in the city. Therefore, okay, fine, there's a bit of a rush, and if you live near it and you really want to send your kid there, whatever, you're going to line up, fine. It's more like this school, Merton, which is more in that zone, meaning that if you live there, you should honestly have an automatic subscription to that school, had a lineup, because there was only this many available spots at that school. And I suppose if all the English schools get full, you have literally no choice but to send your kid to French school, which is, I think, maybe kind of the bigger point of what the government's actually trying to do. A lot of this is my speculation, having heard plenty of things over the years, and I can't substantiate it with a whole lot of facts. I'm just seeing what I'm seeing, and I'm letting y'all know, because I don't know why people who don't live in my city have any idea about some of these things that go on, even though to me they're kind of whack. Like, I went to school in English. I suppose I'm past that. I'm in my 30s. It doesn't necessarily impact me, but should I have children, by the time they're getting to school, it would be like 5 years after the breeding period goes down. And then how bad is the situation going to be then? So what ended up happening is this lineup thing went from Sunday to Monday all the way till Friday to Monday, because these parents need to get their kids into this school because it's that important to them. And for all the parents out there, you get it. You want your kids to have the best quality education, and you're willing to do anything, even camp out. I bet all the parents watching this would inherently be like, yeah, I'd camp out for my kid because that's the thing to do. And if you wouldn't, I don't think you're crazy or anything. I'm not a parent, so I'm not in a position to say the other thing. And I did spend like a few days with people who were like down to do the camp out thing, but I also asked around at work, and it was like a unanimous, yeah, I do the camp out thing. Like, it makes sense. It sucks, but it makes sense. I get asked to help out here. I get asked to do some shifts, and I agree to do it because I figure, I was going to make this video because the entire thing is preposterous, and I never do some crap or actually go see some stuff. So you have to understand, before I go into this, we're like preparing, as a squad. We're hearing stories of what to do in case the parents get savage, and how we're going to handle this swapping business, and we're going to do some 30-minute fist bump thing before we text each other in, make sure everybody runs smooth, make sure everybody does their thing, and it's all squad, and be respectful because of parents. And essentially it was a big ol' be on your best behavior because my kid is going to be going to school with their kids. And I heard the lesson, so I'm walking up and I'm like, this is gonna be quite the experience, right? Like, so I brought my Nintendo Switch, I brought books, I brought everything. I was ready to go hide in a fucking corner until my shift was done, move on, get out. I'm going to give the calmer version of events because I don't want to make anybody look bad. I'm not going to say anybody's names or anything. So I walk up, and not to imply anything bad happened, but, it's literally all this went down in front of a public elementary school. So, we'll just give a redacted version of events for the sake of how amazing this experience turned out to be. Like, holy crap. As a person participating In this, it was like, you guys, okay, so as you can see, I walked up like towards the school and all the tents is there, and I'm like, this is fucking real. Like, oh my gosh. Like, at first, it was this overwhelming, like, people is hardcore. Now, keep in mind, this is crap that parents have to give up a weekend for. We're talking full 24 hours, figure it all out, at least at this school. Other schools figured out other systems, and we'll talk a bit about that at the end. But, like, all these parents are got to basically have a continuous slew of coverage in order to hold their spots because the school has alleviated themselves of all responsibility. When asked about this, the school officials are like, we don't tell the parents to do this. The parents just do this. And why do the parents just do this? Because what are they supposed to do? The school says there are this many slots available. They put that sign up Friday afternoon, and then it's first come, first serve. So, like, what? You know, you don't think it gets more competitive over time? The school does nothing to intervene. And then the school even can kind of like be like, but hey, we didn't invite them onto our property for 2 days. You know, like, it's just kind of a weird situation that the school, just keep in mind, it loves this. The school gains a bunch of press because year over year, it looks like people want to get into the school that badly that they're literally camping out overnight. So the school fucking loves it. On the record, they don't encourage it. Off the record, shit is just freaking perfect press, and it's gonna work. And every year they get headlines. Every year people Google this crap. Every year the news is ready to go. All to film parents just desperately trying to figure it out to get their kids in. So I guess from my perspective this year, I was there. So my dude calls us up. We were originally going to start like Saturday, you know, which is fine. You know, it's like 2 days we going in, but on the way home, he's driving me and next dude who's on the team. We're going to be all like in rotation, and the wife is like, yo, there's already 35. There's only 35 slots. And then he drops us off, and then about an hour later, he's like, yo, I'm already heading down right now. There's already 12 kids on that list. We're talking like 5:30, 6 p.m. in the afternoon after work. Like we're saying already there's like 12 people lining up. Now, what does that mean? If you want to send your kid to the school, you obviously got scouts checking this thing. You're going to drive by and see what the situation's like. You drive by at like 6 o'clock and there's already tents up. You have no choice. What? You're going to risk it? We saw them people who risked it. We saw them as they came on Sundays and whatnot, and they were like trying and praying and hoping, waiting listing it. But not, they waited and they didn't get it. So we get the email and I got asked to come down. So I shoot on through 8 p.m. Friday, and all these tents is up. There are literally at this point 29 families who have like signed up their kid at this point. I am part of Team 18, which was very fun. So I show up, dude bounces out because, you know, like this is dropped on them. They all have like lives. A lot of them have like younger siblings and babies, and, you know, like it's your weekend where you probably got chores and real life stuff. So like having to like shove it up a whole day, it's like, imagine you have to pay a babysitter for an extra like fucking day. Like there are literal costs that get associated with having to pull off renting tents, like all of this shit, food because you're not at home cooking and shit, like all of this stuff. And imagine, and there was quite a few single mothers there, right? And I'm not trying to draw attention to single mothers, but when you consider not having a partner involved in the situation to come help, and it just stacks on the amount of stuff. Again, not a sympathy play, it's a logistical reality. Like, you're looking at this situation and you're like, it's like a holy shit. This is like unfair. It's kind of fucked up. All the school would have to do is like a lottery or another admittance systems, and it would kill this. On the other hand, what about the fact that it's almost like these parents like earn the right to send their kid there, which is kind of whack in a more survival of the fittest kind of way, because there's also a lot of parents who maybe can't manage the situation in a way to send to do the 2-day waiting line. But then there's the ones that pulled it off, and I talked to a couple of the ones that pulled it off, and I'm just sitting there, and it just kind of goes back and forth. But meanwhile, it's like what literally ends up happening is all these families have their lives just disrupted for 3 days for almost the sick amusement of everyone involved. Maybe not the sick amusement, but I'm pretty sure there's some sick and twisted love of the press that comes from this every single year. Maybe they hate it, but if they hated it, they would change it. I'm certain it keeps their admission rates stacked. So I walk up, and I'm expecting it to be like boring because I don't have kids. So I guess your natural assumption is parents kind of boring because they're always talking about their kids at work. And like when you see them with their kids, they're always in like parent mode. That is not what I walked into. I walked up and there's a fire going. Now, the news showed this giant case of Heineken, so there was definitely some alcohol flowing. All I'm going to say is I walked into what could be best described as a winter camping party scenario. It took me a good hour to get myself warmed up to people, to get into some chit-chats, to introduce myself, but all I can tell you is 8 to 10 disappeared. The heater came. I just threw in $7 towards the heater. I was like, how could I not? I'm going to be here. I'm going to be doing this. I knew I had 10, 11 hours on the books at that point. I'm like, I'm going to make sure that these people, if I'm going to be at their party, at their situation, I'm going to be like a gracious guest that contributes and stuff. So needless to say, I get lost in like a great series of conversation with a bunch of parents who are without their kids for like the first time in ages. So it was weird because they were all loosey-goosey ready to go. Part of it might be some liquid courage, but I think the bigger part of it is the general stress of the situation mixed with this reality of, oh shit, I don't have my kid tonight. And that was amazing. So they all got fun. I mean, but then the news is there. Let's talk about the news. Let's talk about Mr. Shields, the reporter who did this. This dude was filming when I arrived. Dude's kind of interviewing the parents and whatnot, puts up this news story, and he like doxes all the fucking parents in a sense. Like, maybe not doxing in the sense of releasing your address or whatever, but he like fucking close-ups in on like my colleague that like I'm working with's kid's name, like just fucking front and center. And it's like, hold up, did he just put like all of it? And then my colleague had written his like first name next to it. So essentially it just said, this guy spending 3 days, not like here's some anonymous people. Like the dude, and I watched him with his camera walking around. It was dude and the next dude, and trust, like this was not like whatever. Dude also edited this video as he was bragging to us. Like this was not the news network. This was the individual reporter's decision, and then the news network left it up for 3 days. So that's where they fucking come into it. But I just want to point that out because I watched dude do his thing. He was talking to me, we were shooting the shit, everything was cool, filming, everything felt like a normal situation. The news is doing their thing, but like holy crap, like you're watching into this story where he probably filmed like 45 minutes worth of shit, and he used like a minute and a half, and like in that they decide to use like all the kids' names. And I'm like, that's fucking whack. And somebody should really fire that dude for that. Like, fucking fire them. I don't know, man. Something about revealing children's personal information for the sake of a news story seems unethical and wrong, in my opinion. Just because it's kids' fucking legal names. I don't know. You don't have to agree with me, but like I said, I mean, maybe linking to the news story is just as bad. So if I said I did that before, I don't think I'm going to actually do that because it's kind of that I'm contributing to it, but I don't know. We'll move on from this topic. But yeah, so the news guy does this thing, but there's a second thing this news guy does, and it was just really sad because it's like, you know, like when you see the news on the internet and then like you see the news in real life and you're like, yo, this is some whackness happening. So check it. Dude, like, and I talked to the lady, so I got her side of the story. Dude sneaks up on single mom lady and films her building up a tent. And I know that this woman had to grind it out, basically be there for 3 days. And she did the deed, and she was admirable, and she was such a respectable person. And then he apparently snuck up on her whilst she was building the tent and kind of ambushed her and pushed her into doing the little interview. And that goes live, and a bunch of fucking people are like, oh, they just did this to point out the plight of a single mom. What about the single dads? And I would like to say, in defense of this reporter, that is not true. That dude literally was yelling, anyone with a tent want to do an interview? And like nobody wanted to do an interview with him and whatnot, except, and I'm gonna even say Yellow Jacket dude, Yellow Jacket dude, if you did happen to watch it, he tried to like edit out the only part that the guy, he's like, don't use that part, and it's like the only fucking part he used. It was like fucking stupid watching it. So I would like to make a comment. The reason there was no focus on single dads is, to my knowledge, because I might be wrong, there were no single dads that camped out 3 days to get their kids into school. So I suppose, I mean, maybe at other schools there were, but it didn't seem like there were any single dads at Royal Vale camping out. So that's the answer to your question. They weren't there. That's why they weren't on the news, for the people who thought it was some sexist shit. I'm curious to know where the single dads were too. It would have been cool to shoot the shit because there were single moms there. I'm not going to say who's or whatever's, but I'm going to say that you maybe, if you're a single person, want to help out some parents camping out for schools. That's a good environment to be in if you're single, is all I'm trying to say for that. I thought it was so fulfilling, right? Like, so I end up having some more personal, sadder things to take care of on Saturday, so I couldn't really be there for most of the day. We end up getting back to Montreal around 6 p.m., and my dude, who was doing the 8 to 10 or the 7 to 10 shift, whatever fucking shift he was doing. I come in for 9 to 10. So I come in and do that shift. But I end up and I had so much fun sitting in front of this heater, kind of like going to summer camp or winter camp or whatever, escaping normal. And then I was like, I want to go back. So I ended up coming in a half hour early. My dude ended up staying a half hour after he was able to go because I was there at that point. I ended up leaving a half an hour after the guy came in to replace me because the people we were with, I didn't know parents were so fun. I realized, so a bunch of parents in a fishbowl environment, not surrounded by Baby Shark and like other parents talking about babies and shit, seemed to really vibe on some fun new conversations. And they were really fun to talk to. Like, I had a blast. I learned stuff. I mean, I don't know, at one point, because we ended up coming back on Sunday, and I ended up spending pretty much the whole day there on Sunday. So what I learned Sunday morning was the day shift had kids and was a little less lit, we'll say, than the evening shift was, which was more what I had experienced up until that point. So day shift kind of moves along, and it's not that it's boring. I had plenty of great conversations. It was just that the night shift is totally the shift you want to volunteer for if you're subbing in. Don't sub for the day shift. Do the night shift. That's gonna be more fun for you if you don't have kids. Because, like I said, I watched this personality change happen with these parents where during the day when their kids were around, they were like straight parent mode. Like, they were paying less attention to anything you said to them. Like, they were so focused on whatever, and they were like unable to be fully committed to anything other than, their parenting and making sure their families are okay and doing the normal. I have nothing to do with that. I'm just some guy like walking through at that point. So I ended up shooting the shit with some great people who will go unnamed, but like all the great people were like cool. I ended up like literally, emails. I got a literal phone number of somebody. I got Facebooks. It was like, am I coming to this summer camp and bonding with these parents which think about it, like I'm just a guy there helping out a nice dude, and I'm bonding with these parents like my kid is going to this school, and I don't have a kid. It did make me want a kid. Talking to these parents made me want to breed so badly. Anyway, I just couldn't believe how like vivid the like split was between like daytime parent and like nighttime no kid parent. Like, and it was really fun. And then it was also like in a lot of cases like the wives were around, and then everyone was without their significant others, and I really loved watching the whole family just get together and like pitch in. And this one's brother came in, somebody's mom would do like the overnight, like just watching everyone like work together and just watching this passionate, interesting group of people make the best of the situation. Because even the daytime crowd, I know it wasn't like, I might not be making it sound fun, but we're saying the fun went from 10 on 10 to 9 on 10 because it was still really cool. I just felt like there's a lot of kids around, and for me, it's like, I don't like being around a lot of kids because I'm not good at being appropriate around children, so it freaks me out a bit. Plus, I came on the early shift with a big coffee, and holding your pee, very challenging after a large coffee. So anyway, moving on. I leave for a bit. I do some chores, but the big topic at the early part of the day was absolutely how they're going to project the Super Bowl. And they came up with the plan. But in the meantime, as it is, there's Domino's boxes, there's freaking a barbecue that's showing up, there's chips, there's freaking coffee boxes from Tim Hortons, there's donuts, I'm like, these people made fucking lemonade out of nothing. Like, it was so inspiring. Like, I know how corny that might sound, but like, I am totally enthralled with my experience just kind of being around them. I don't even know. I think this video might even be getting long and rambly, but like, it was just so crazy that like, they all had to do this, and then totally just made it really fun. So on Sunday, I end up spending from like, I finish at like 1 for that shift, and then I'm back at 4, and I just stick it through till 10. I had a couple hours off in the middle. I just said, fuck it, come on through. Chris Chrome, who y'all know from the channel, absolutely also came through and was part of this. So if you don't believe me, Chris Chrome is somebody you can hit up and be like, is Holden exaggerating this? Nah, he is not exaggerating this. But like, as Chris Chrome is there, they freaking pull out the barbecue. So now like, me and Chris is there. I'm glad I didn't leave at this point. The Super Bowl is getting projected. We're getting burgers, hot dogs. Like, it's like, what the fuck where are we? We're literally in front of an elementary school in the middle of the afternoon. And what's cool is the cops just like let it slide, right? The cops feel absolutely bad about the situation, and the cops let us make the best of the situation without being any kind of bad people in the way that you might expect cops to be. So kudos to the SPVM for being dope on this one. And there's like literally a police station 3 blocks away. So like, the cops wanted to be dicks. They could have been dicks. So kudos to them. Super Bowl happens. And I think one of the highlights is this guy who we'll get to in a second, points at me and goes, your buddy's fucking hilarious. Look at him, because Chris had been trying to leave. And of course, he couldn't leave either, because when you want to leave, you're in the middle of a conversation, chilling, your shift's up. You're like, but it's so fun. Anyway, he gets up to leave. We look up, and he's just eating a fucking hot dog, no bun, having a conversation. He couldn't even get out of the fucking field before, like, he got caught up. Like, that's the kind of vibe it was. So, like, literally, I know we didn't record shit all for the channel this weekend, but, like, this is what we were doing. It was, like, such a weird experience. Last thing, as just a little fun story, is I like to sing on my bicycle as I go through the streets of Montreal. And one of the guys I met, who I thought was a chill fellow, I very much enjoyed my conversations with him, was telling me where he lived. And I'm like, yeah, I cycle through your neighborhood, and I'll be honest, I sing pretty loud. And he goes, that's you? And then he asked me if I wear headphones. I'm like, nah, I don't wear headphones. I promise, I'm on a cycle. And he goes, nah, I know who you are. He's like, me and my wife, we hear you. And he proceeded to tell everyone I sounded good. So, like, it was, like, a flattering thing. It got to the point where me and this fine fellow have got to, like, and I had remembered seeing him. When I met him, I'm like, I know you. And, like, we couldn't figure it out. And then it was like, oh, shit, I cycle past this dude singing, like, all the fucking time. Turns out, the guy with the headphones is fucking Chris Chrome. He saw Chris, and he's like, he recognized both of us from this channel. Ran into him at this school thing. Like, it was just, this dude failed to have a wedding situation goes down. I'm opting not to use the footage for this, but he ends up giving this grandiose speech about how it didn't work out, etc., and has these big final moment of closure as he chucks these branded wedding cutting boards that she sneakily left behind to shade him with their names on it, advertising the weddings. They were the sample ones. And as like a way to like let go of her, he throws it into our fire. And I'm like, what the fuck is this weekend? But I can tell you, I walked out of it with new friends, wanting to have kids so I could do it myself in a few years, and going, this is some fucked up shit. Because this was an amazing version. I had a blast. And it was mostly because the weather was pretty warm. But while I wasn't there, it dropped to negative 11 degrees Celsius, which y'all can check. It's negative some shit that's cold up in the Fahrenheits. And thankfully I wasn't there, but imagine for those parents who were intense and shit, just kind of waiting. That must have been kind of cold, eh? Well, last year's group dealt with negative fucking 20. And with negative 20, people were just not as jolly. They did, in fact, watch the Super Bowl. That happens apparently most years with projectors. Parents get to that point. But imagine just negative 20 Celsius, which is still butt fucking cold Fahrenheit. It's just fucked, right? It's fucked because parents don't really have a choice because this is the system. And nobody wants to change the system because it's really fucking good advertising. But end of the day, if this competition keeps happening and schools keep closing, I suppose by the time that I get there as a person with children, it'll be like we're all camping out for a literal fucking week. And I know it sounds hyperbolic, but why the fuck wouldn't they, right? Why? I mean, maybe they won't. Maybe it'll always be this shit. But now I know that it's a 3-day camp out minimum. And that's what I better buy a fucking tent today and now, you know? Like, and then it's going to be every English school, not just one of them. This is going to be every English school in the neighborhood, in the whole area, in all the areas. Because, I mean, unless there's only one English school and you have no choice, but what if there's only that many spots in the English school or it's French school? Because for those English Montrealers watching, I suppose that's what's coming next. Anyway, I don't know what I wanted to do with this video, but I went through this like crazy experience this weekend, and I felt like it was very eye-opening. Just how dedicated and passionate parents can be, but also how unfair it is that this is the system. It's just fucked up, I guess. You guys can check it out. You guys can look into the news, see what you find, but it's some real shit. And I suppose I'm going to leave this with the question, do y'all in your respective parts of the town and whatnot in the world have similar situations where parents have to camp out like it's a Nintendo Wii release to like fucking get their kid into school? Or what is your system like? Because, yo, man, Montreal's a fucking weird place sometimes. I don't know what you think of this style of video. I didn't necessarily script it because you can tell by my rambling nature, but it's because I haven't slept properly. It just happened, and I wanted to just give you, like, I guess a calmer version of the stories I told at work, which went into much more explicit details. Again, not to imply that, like, fuck it and shit went down. It was very family appropriate and all that, but it was fun watching parents turn up when their kids aren't around, is all I'm trying to say. Enough to make me go, no shit, you can still fucking be lit anyway, it was really eye-opening for me, and let me know what you think about any of it. And if there's any other topics that you care about that you want to see me talk about, we can try that. I'm not certain if there are. Either way, I'm exhausted. So subscribe to the channel, like the video, let me know in the comments what you think. And special thanks to the patrons: Milka Dempsey, Chris Pato, Jonathan Barnes, E.G. Black Hurricane, Linda Williams, Coney Sparks, and Scribble. They're dope. They support what we do and all that good stuff. So if you want to help us get to the next level, you want to show some love, check that out. Let us know what you think. To be fair, we mostly do music album reviews, but we are trying to branch out and try different kind of content. So anyway, thanks, y'all. I make music myself. You can find that on this channel, on Spotify, everything, links below. Live long and prosper, everyone.